So, um, so I told Rick and Eve that we needed to do music today because every day this week I was running from the time I got up until the time I went to bed. And on Thursday, we had Deborah's brother's memorial. And then yesterday, I went out to Donna Sloan's place. You guys, some of you will know who Donna Sloan is. Her sister, Susan, passed away. And they were going to bury her, and I was supposed to, I thought I was going to have plenty of time because I was supposed to be out there at 2 o'clock to do the graveside. And the people from the funeral home, so on Donna Sloan's property, they have cordoned off an area that is a cemetery ever since we buried her husband, Robin. And so her sister was going to be buried in that same location. The funeral home's tractor that they brought out to dig the hole could only go down about 3 feet, and then they hit rock. And they tried twice and ran in 2 different places and ran into the same thing. So Donna had to call a friend that lives close who has a bigger tractor, like 3 times the size of the one that the funeral home was trying to use. And eventually he was able to actually dig the hole, get through the rock and dig the hole. But by then it was 4 o'clock. So by the time we had the service and then went back to the house for the reception, and by the time I got done, I wasn't coming back this direction until between 5 and 5:30. So a lot of you guys got texts right about that time. That was because she lives out in an area where the cell phone signal is almost non-existent. Okay? So I had to drive back to a place where there's actually enough signal, and you guys had left texts and people tried to call me and all sorts of things. My phone blew up once I got back into signal strength. And so I pulled over to the side of the road and I was texting with many of you. So I had started in the morning to try to do the setup for here, ran out of time before I had to go to do that. So then I had to come back here and finish all of the setup for today. And I just did not have time to put together a message. And so we had told Rick and Eve, well, we're just going to do music. So bring out the long set, and that's what we're going to do. Well, in talking with Deborah, she said, you ought to use this opportunity, actually, to talk about this particular subject. Death, dying, body preparation, burial, all of these kinds of things. Because in Jewish practice, it's done very differently than in Christian practice. In Christian practice, and so today what we're going to talk about is going to be very practical in nature. It's not spiritual, so much spiritual, it's not theological. But in Christian practice, the normal anyway, is that whenever the individual passes away, the funeral home comes to wherever the body is, picks the body up, takes it to the funeral home, does the embalming, and usually the family purchases like a metal coffin to put the person in. Very decorative. You know, the more money you spend, the more decorative it is. And a lot of the cemeteries, now this is not a state requirement, but this is their own policy a lot of times, require that you put what they call a vault in the ground, whether it be a concrete vault or a metal vault, in the ground into which you put the coffin, okay? In Jewish thought and practice, completely different than that. We try to get the person, if at all possible, it usually doesn't work out this way, but we try our best to get the person's remains into the ground within 24 hours of passing. It's done without embalming. Every individual, no matter their rank or status or whatever, they all get put in the same plain wooden box, and buried directly into the ground with no vault, no anything, so that you decompose and return to the dust. Because the scripture says, from dust you came, to dust you will return. And so as Jewish people, we take that seriously. And so we, through the years, have unfortunately had to bury many people. And within Judaism, as a general rule, you have what is called the Chevra Kadisha, the Holy Burial Society. And it's the job of that burial society. You've got a group of women and you've got a group of men who are responsible when the time comes. So they have volunteered, they are set aside for the purpose of body preparation, and you basically sit with the body until the body goes into the ground, okay? So there is what's called a shomer, that at least one, if not more than one, that resides with the body at all times, and if it's long enough, you do shifts and so on, but the body is not left alone until it actually goes into the ground. So, in doing it that way, you can run into all sorts of complications. And so, number one, I want to just go kind of down the list of the folks that we have buried, and just talk a little bit about the different things that we've encountered. And these are things that you guys know, those that come here often, you know I am constantly encouraging you, and I'm going to encourage you yet again today, if you haven't done it already, you need to go get all of your arrangements taken care of ahead of time. Okay? Don't wait until the last minute, because what ends up happening is in your family, you are leaving your family to try to scramble at the last minute to figure out what they're going to do. Okay? And at your passing, that is not the time to put that burden on them. It should already be all set up so that when the time comes, everybody knows exactly what to do and they just do it. And the family is unencumbered with those kinds of decisions and actions and so on. Now, we have not had here, we used to have a Chevra Kadisha. We have not had one now for several years. A lot of the people that used to be part of that are no longer with the synagogue, okay? However, we do have a funeral home in Van, Hilliard Funeral Home, and they oversee Union Chapel Cemetery in Garden Valley, and they have been very, very gracious in working with us on numerous burials. We have several different people that are buried at Union Chapel Cemetery, and they've kind of got a section set aside for our folks, okay? They have the wooden caskets. Because they have worked with us in the past when we did have a Chevra Kadisha, and they learned how to actually do it, they now can do that for us, okay? And they have the last several folks that have passed and that we've had to bury out there. So I want this to be very practical. You know, this is not hopefully not a boohoo time. That's not my intention. But I just want to go down the list real quick. And in this way, we can remember these people as well. People that maybe some of you have not even thought of for many, many years. And it's good to remember them again. Okay? The very first person that we ever did this with his name was Bo Walker. The Walkers and us and a woman named Chris Caffey were the ones who basically prayed this congregation into existence. And some of you know Bo from other places, may not have been here when Bo was here, but he was buried in Chandler. He had a typical funeral and a memorial, but that was our first, because he was the first person in our congregation to pass away, that was our first encounter and the shock of having to clean a body for the first time. That was a major learning experience for us. That's when we really began learning about the Chevra Kadisha, because we knew about the Chevra Kadisha, but we didn't really know anything about what it does and how it operates and what you do and all of that kind of thing. That was when we began learning about burial regulations and all of that kind of thing. In the state of Texas, we actually have fairly loose regulations. Like I said, as far as the state of Texas is concerned, as far as regulations are concerned, you don't have to have a vault, okay? In some states, throughout the state, they have a state law that if you're going to put somebody in the ground, you have to have a vault in the ground, okay? But Texas is not that way. Yeah. Now, I don't know about on somebody's personal, their personal cemetery area, if that's true as well or not. But anyway, even in the other states? Yeah, I don't know in the other states whether they require that in a personal cemetery or not, but here you don't have to do that. Yes. Yes. Okay. In Missouri. Yeah, in Missouri. I think maybe like out in California, they may require it. No? No. Okay.
You cannot bury anybody on your private property. It has to be in a cemetery.
Oh, okay. So see, that's a different law. Can't bury somebody on your private property. Mm. This is where we learned the intricacies of the Jewish type of burial, all of the processes and the way to clean the body, to anoint, to wrap, to the blessings. It's actually a fairly involved process. Next was my dad. We buried him at Shamgar, which is a ministry, well, it used to be a ministry location out east of Tyler. He had arranged things in advance. He had actually built his and my mother's coffin boxes, and they were, so he built them and then disassembled them and had them laying underneath their house, waiting for the day that they would be used, and all it required was a reassembly. However, people's bodies change over time. And, we ran into some issues of where we were going to clean my father's body. We ran into issues of who was actually going to do it. It ended up being me, Rick, and my brother-in-law, Art, that ended up doing it. Okay? The unfortunate thing, one of the probably the most unfortunate things, is my father passed on Rick's birthday. And Rick had to spend his birthday washing my dad's body. Okay? That's, and after that, it's hard to live something like that down. I mean, you just don't forget that. So, but it's, it was beyond our control. Nobody has control over those kinds of things. And of course, then I mentioned Robin Sloan, Donna's husband. He was buried on their property in a section that they set aside, designated as a cemetery by filling out legal paperwork with the state. They had complications in digging the hole. With that hole too, they ran into rock. Okay? So this area that they chose for a cemetery, you go down so far and then you hit bedrock. Okay? Yeah, well, it doesn't, in Texas, it's 6 feet. Okay? So in some places, I suppose, if you went down 6 feet, you would hit water, but usually that's not deep enough to really get into the water table. So just some complications. So we had complications digging the hole. The length of rope needed to lower the body, because he had requested that rather than be put in a box, that he just be enshrouded and, in essence, strapped or tied to a board, okay, a plank. And we had the men that were there had to lower his body, this plank with his body on it, down into the ground with ropes. And, you know, the ropes were not the right length. It had been raining, and it was clay, red clay, so it was slippery. Some of us almost fell in the hole in the process. There was also the issue of communicable disease because Robin died of hepatitis. And so everything that was used for the purpose of cleaning the body, anything and everything that had any contact with him went into the hole with him. Okay. Next was my sister Sharon. This is Rick's mom. She was also buried out at Shamgar in the same burial place where my mother and father are. May their names be for a blessing. We were, including Nate and Stephanie, in Dallas at a UMJC conference. And as a result of Sharon's untimely death, Rick had not had the opportunity to make a coffin. And so Stephanie's father volunteered to make it quickly, and Stephanie via phone sent the dimensions desired. Okay. Sharon passed away at Mother Frances Hospital, so we learned about their procedure in our case. The dimensions got mixed up on the box, and Sharon ended up with a coffin that was so large that we were afraid it was not going to even fit in the hole. And Nate, no, thank you. Of course, Rick is a witty individual, and he quipped that Sharon always wanted to be an interior decorator. And in that case, the ones that prepared the body were my wife, Deborah, Eve, and Sandra DeMars. And then not too long after that was my mother. She again also was buried out at Shamgar. She died not long after Sharon, and we had a problem with her coffin. Because at the time that Dad built the coffin many years prior, they had measured her when she was much smaller in girth. And we didn't realize, because over years it changed gradually, that she had physically changed that much. And we literally, of course I wasn't involved obviously, but the women who did this literally had to turn her sideways to get her into the box. So when you're doing this, these are all things that you can end up running into at the moment, that totally unforeseen, and you just have to deal with the situation at that time. I mean, you have to make a decision. What are we going to do? And then do that. We also have buried Helen Stapp, Mark's mother, and also Kim's father, And let's see. So that was when we found out about Hilliard in Van and Union Chapel, and they are the least expensive in the area. We've had some people who, because of expense, were thinking about cremation, and we told them, go talk to Hilliard. And they found out that they could bury their loved one for as much or less than it would cost them to have them cremated, okay? Which in Jewish practice is, burial is the accepted traditional method with the body. So from then on, we've had a relationship with them. Before, we were trying to work with Lloyd James, and they worked with us for a little while, but I think their attitude changed like all of a sudden, and I think it was because Lloyd James Funeral Home is the funeral home that the non-Messianic synagogues in Tyler use. And I think they probably came to Lloyd James and said, if you continue to allow the Messianic Jews to use this facility, we're taking our business elsewhere. And so the next time we had a situation, they were like, no, you can't. They didn't give us any kind of reason or anything like that. It's like, we're not doing this anymore. So, we then buried Winnie Arnold. After that, Timna Rutledge, Diane Orozco, Richard Orozco, Brendan Bennington, and then yesterday, Susan, I don't know what Susan's last name was, but Donna Sloan's sister. What's that? Oh, Gary Freitag, yes. And I don't know in what order he was right before Brendan. Was he after Richard? He was before Richard. Anyway, and guys, there may be some that I've missed. Unfortunately, we've buried a lot of people, but that's part of life. I mean, we're all going to go there at some point in time, and so even with the planning helps. Okay, helps to avoid these last minute kind of things that can come up. But in some cases, they're unavoidable, like the rocks in the ground yesterday. When the funeral home brought their tractor out, they didn't know they were going to run into rock when they were trying to dig the hole. So at that, and the unfortunate thing was, because she was being buried in a Jewish manner, the body had not been embalmed, and the funeral home had already come out to the location with the body, with the expectation that they were going to be putting the body in the ground at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that didn't happen for 2 more hours. Okay? When you've got a body that's not embalmed, 2 hours can make a big difference, actually. So, what's that? It was relatively cool, so it was not like a hot summer day in Texas, which would have made things even worse. But again, please, I know this is kind of off the cuff that I'm bringing this to you, but please, for the sake of your friends and your family and all of that, go make your arrangements. Okay? And, you know, I keep plugging Van, you know, Hilliard's and Van. Guys, go talk to them. They're lovely people. They want to work with us. They'll do whatever you want to do. They'll help you in whatever way. They're very, very kind people. And well, I was going to say they love us, but, you know, we bring them business. So, you know, who wouldn't, right? But no, they are very, very kind people, and they will work with you. And some of you have already gone and done that, and that's good. But get it taken care of for the sake of your family. So, you know, on the day of your death, they're not trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's a very loving thing to do for them ahead of time. Before we move on, there's something else that I need to address, something that's going on in our country that I need to address today, that I just found out about this morning. I was sent a message that former President Trump has announced that he is supposed to be arrested on Tuesday, and he has called for protests to save our country. That's what he has said. Let me, as your spiritual leader, let me give you some admonition. Number one, if they're actually going to do this, they know that there are a lot of people who so look up to Mr. Trump that they almost treat him like he's a god. And no matter what he tells them to do, they are going to do it. So if he calls for protests, they're going to protest. And if you guys thought the January 6th debacle was bad, if this goes down, this is going to be 100 times worse. And it's exactly what they want to have happen. Okay? So I want to say, I guarantee you that if this happens, it is a distraction. They're doing this because they want to do something else that they don't want you to know about. Okay? So they're going to cause a big scene in the country so everybody's attention is over on Trump being arrested and all the protests, etc. First of all, us protesting is not going to save our country. Okay? In my estimation, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, we're just right on the cliff and we're about to fall. That's not my opinion. My personal opinion is we've already stepped off the cliff and we are in free fall right now. And the only one who can save us is the hand of Hashem, coming and scooping underneath us and catching us and putting us back up on the land. And short of that, we are not saving this country. You can protest all you want. We're not saving this country. Okay? I want to strongly encourage you, do not involve yourself in the protests against Trump being arrested. Okay? I can't control what you do. what you choose to do. But my recommendation is do not get involved, because they're going to be paying attention to every individual who is involved in the protests. I guarantee you. Okay? And we're already on their radar because we're different. Okay? Don't make it easier for them. Don't give them more political prisoners to put in jail. Okay? Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Also say, be aware of your surroundings, even so.
Yes.
Even so, be aware of where you are.
And what's going on around you. Yes. Be aware. Yes, Donna. I tell you what. Let me pray, and then we can have a little bit of conversation after the live stream is off. Okay? So Abba, we just we bring both of these situations to you, Lord. We all will meet our demise at some point in time. I pray that you'll help us to figure out how to help those we love and to get this issue settled. It will be good for us. It'll be a load off of us, and it will be a load off of our loved ones. And then, Father, in regards to what's going on in our country, Abba, you have a greater destiny for us. You have a greater calling that you want us to be involved in. And I can't help, in this situation, I can't help but think back to the time of Yeshua and what was going on at that time. And very similar kinds of things happening, similar attitudes, and the zealots that wanted to throw off Roman occupation. And Father, we know how that ended up with Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, proclaiming Shimon Bar Kokhba as Messiah. And that decision was what drove the wedge between the Messianic Jews and non-Messianic Jews. It's what was the catalyst for Rome to destroy Jerusalem and to destroy the temple and to scatter us all over the world. So, Father, you have something else for us to do in Messiah. I pray that we will not be distracted by what's going on around us, that we will keep our focus where it's supposed to be, and we will do what you've called us to do, and let the world deal with themselves. Let them fall apart and explode. We will continue to march forward in your light as darkness descends all around us. In Yeshua's name, amen.